The bombs are just unpredictable, and it's really hard to combat them and all this stuff. And so we were tasked as combat engineers with something called night route clearance, which is middle of the night, go out, turn on all your lights, and you basically have a convoy. The first two vehicles straddle the sides of the road, and they're driving. They don't have any guns on top. There's just single-man vehicles called these Huskies. And as you're driving, you're looking for IEDs and or improvised explosive devices. And the goal with it is you as a unit are clearing the road for everyone else to use, because you can then say, 2 hours ago we cleared that route, there are no ambushes set up, there are no roadside bombs, etc. I was 20 when I went to do this. Everyone I was with was much older, and I was too dumb and young to understand all of the dangers. In hindsight, it was fun. The lifestyle, you're basically running around with a bunch of dudes. You got guns, and it's dangerous, right? It's adventure. It's all this stuff. I grew up a lot, which is shocking to say now, but at 20, when you're with 30, 35-year-olds, and they're talking about their mortgages, and you just left playing football in college and going to parties, kind of a life shock. And there's experiences where at the time you don't realize, like, hey, this is going to have a material impact on my life, but there's everything from getting shot at. We had one guy who died on a mission, and then even getting into those Husky vehicles. I tell a story all the time, like, if you want to understand the psychology of these people who we send to war, we used to get into the vehicles and have tourniquets already on our arms and our legs. So in this one vehicle, you're by yourself, there's a way to get in, there's a hatch. So you basically get in and you close the hatch. If anything happens, you get blown up, anything occurs, and you need to apply a tourniquet, you're the only person. So let's say that you lost your arm, now you have to apply a tourniquet to yourself with only one arm. Not going to happen, right? Or it's going to be very difficult. And so basically what we would do is we would put the tourniquets on and have them loose, but you are essentially getting in, it's kind of like a death box, right? If you get in this thing and anything happens, you're by yourself. And so you have the tourniquets on, and so like at 20 to like go through this experience, it messes with you, right? And not in like a negative way as much as it is when I got back, you're just like, dude, I'm gonna have the most fun I possibly can have in life. Like, this thing's gonna end at some point, and like when I go out,
it's all house money. I made it home.
People are gonna tell epic stories about whatever I do between now and that day, right? And I think it's the cliche thing of like you get a new lease on life, all that kind of stuff is you feel it. And then the other thing was I went back to school, and then like I'm like there with like 21-year-olds who are like, you want to go to this party on Friday? I'm like, whoa, I don't care so much about all that other, like, you kind of get indoctrinated back into it. And so it's hard to tell like how much of that impacts, but like that was definitely a defining moment in my life where I came back and thought differently.
And so how does that wiring change? I mean, because it's surprising how quickly you get used to things, right?
Oh yeah,
that seems like something very hard to get used to, right? Strapping up, we're going to clear IEDs. We're going out at night. We're not sure if there are people guarding these things.
Yep.
And we're basically, we have the target on our backs.
Oh, yeah.
So that we can clear away, and that it's not everybody else.
When I was in Iraq, we used to clear this one road in a stretch of it. I was actually just telling somebody the story. About half-mile stretch was known as IED Alley. And there was, I don't know, probably 20 of these different locations around the country that IED Alley, because there were a bunch of these things that would go off. And I remember while we were there, one of the first weeks, somebody said, hey, be careful, there's bounties on everyone's head. I don't know what that really means, whatever. And at the time, I forget the exact amount, like, I don't say 10 grand, 5 grand, 15 grand, whatever. Basically, if Al-Qaeda killed a U.S. soldier and was able to prove with video evidence that they killed a U.S. soldier, there was these bounties. And so you don't think about, like, when you're driving down the road, like, hey, people are actually have a bounty on my head. You're thinking much more kind of offensively, like, I hope somebody does something because they don't want to mess with us, right? You kind of have this like aggressive mindset. But at the same time,
to your point, it's almost better if there's someone else there versus just trying to clear the field of the IEDs. Well, so at least you feel like you can fight back. Versus
it's like going into an environment where you're hyper aware of your surroundings and you know that there's danger, you're very well prepared or more prepared for a dangerous situation than if you and I are walking down the street in New York City and a bomb went off. Nobody's hyper aware. No one's in kind of that mindset. And so you've got a gun, right? I mean, all these things that help. But the other thing was you very quickly get used to the danger, right? And so I laugh all the time. Like, we go on missions and people are sleeping on the way to do whatever, like between when we leave the gate and, like, let's say we're going to go, search a village or something. There's literally people sleeping in the trucks on the way there. And when you first get there, that's not what happens, right? Everyone is like literally gripping their gun. Everyone's super stressed out. And by the time that you're ready to leave, you're just like, this is the new normal. Yeah. And I joke. You ever seen the movie? I think it is the one where what is it? Zero Dark Thirty, where they go and they kill Bin Laden.
They got the small talk beforehand,
and they're in the helicopter, and like dudes are sleeping, right? Like that is so real because it is that is the least stressful, least dangerous part of being there is before we go actually do the dangerous stuff. Anyone else in the world think that's crazy, but.
It is nuts to someone that hasn't been in that environment, but I suppose understandable maybe for other folks that have been in that situation.
There's a lot of people who have been in the military in tech that you would never guess. I won't out them, but a lot of investors, a lot of entrepreneurs, and many of them would shock you who they are. Immigrants, people who are very kind of laid back, you would never associate with kind of military service. And the one thing that I think I'm proud of them and myself is just like nobody goes around and like rubs it in people's faces, right? No one's like, I did this, so I deserve X. I think that type of training really. Somebody asked me recently, like, what was the biggest experience from it all, right? Or what did I learn from it? And it's this idea that like you can't force people to follow you. You have to earn the right to lead them. And I think that shows, like in these other folks that I'm thinking of, like that shows in all of them. And it's pretty cool to see, we've been at war for 17 years now. Like there's a lot of bets.
No kidding. Our first hire at Messari was a naval vet, Hector, and he actually came up with the name Messari. I'm not even going to tell you what the working name was, but we knew we wanted to hire him. It was Token Eyes. Like that was like.
See how I got asked a question and got
him? Token Eyes.
Token Eyes.
Like, and it was not meant to be like a go-to-market name or anything. It was kind of like a working title. But one of his first emails back to us was, really like everything that you guys are working on. I have one small suggestion. We should change the name and here's some ideas. It was super thoughtful, and it was kind of like indicative of
he's in the Navy, so he has to be smart because he can't be tough, right? The Navy,
he was in the Naval Academy, right? Yeah. they picked you out like the football tryouts.
The Navy guys will get all upset I said that. I'm joking.
Exactly. Anyways, that's a great place to start because I feel like an experience like that, it's got to just change the total outlook on life and how you approach things. So, what's the path between you come back to college from your time in Iraq and you fall into this weird crypto rabbit hole? Because there's a lot of stuff and other building blocks that happen in between. I feel like that first building block is a major one.
Yep.
Your mindset shifts, you come back to college. What's next? And how do you think about now you're an adult. Now you're a man been serving.
I'm still figuring that out.
Right?
No, I think that so there's kind of three major things. One, when I went back to college, at the time I didn't realize it, but I greatly benefited. I had played football before, went back to playing football, and a lot of guys that I was deployed with had pretty significant psychological issues. Again, you're going from a normal person to this high stress, dangerous environment. Where you just see a bunch of stuff you wouldn't normally be exposed to, then you go back to that normal environment, right? So all the PTSD stuff, etc. For me, I went from a small unit of mostly males in a violent atmosphere where it's us versus them, right? To a football team where small unit of men, violent environment, us versus them, just you don't die if you mess up, right? You don't have a gun. So it was kind of this, in hindsight again, like it was this nice transition into like I didn't go right back to just being by myself and
you have to put on a suit and tie.
Yeah, jacked up and now I gotta go to work, right? Yep. And so I think that was a major advantage that I had over a lot of other folks that wasn't intentional, but I benefited from. Coming out of college, didn't do a single job interview, anything. My father basically told me you can get a job or you can create a job. Didn't really know what creating a job meant, but super interesting compared to getting a job. Again, you got this new lease on life, so you're kind of, let's go have fun. Started a company with a couple of friends from high school. We knew nothing, made every mistake in the book, but basically survived. And that led to building a second company. Was able to sell that company again. Small technology.
What were the first two companies?
The first one was a online advertising business. We essentially monetized the page where in public schools people would go check their grades. So the login page, millions of impressions per month in all these public school districts. There's no ads. There's nothing, like the rest of the internet is monetized. That one page had incredible traffic and wasn't monetized. So we put
if it can be sold, you will sell it. That's generally so that's another building block, right?
It was fun, and like we did everything that we shouldn't have done. It was super unscalable, horrible idea, all this stuff. But we made it work and learned a lot. And so the first two companies were small technology companies, and what it really let me do was make all the mistakes in an environment where I was responsible for whether we were successful or not.
Yep.
Right? And again, walked out of those two experiences probably with a little bit more money in my pocket than any of my friends had made at a regular job. Wasn't rich, and kind of lived to tell the tale about it. And I ended up going to work at Facebook after that because I really wanted to go learn how do you build companies, right? And there was two options. Go work at a large company that knew what they were doing from people who had done it, or go to business school and pay them to learn. One pays you, you pay the other. I went and I got paid to go learn at Facebook, and there's a group, probably 4 or 5 people who I have no clue why they did it. They just kind of took me under their wing in different capacities, and they said, look, if you kind of follow this playbook, we're going to teach you everything. And that's really where I learned all the growth stuff. I mean, the Facebook growth team is the best in the world, right? They have kind of become this farm system for the rest of Silicon Valley. And
regardless of what you think of the brand, you cannot argue that they know
best growth team
growth hacking because they invented it. In many ways.
Look, the thing that many people don't realize about that growth team is Facebook understood better than anyone else everything can be quantified, right? And when you quantify something, you can set the testing correctly, you can try to move the wrong metrics or all stuff, but everything can be quantified and everything can be influenced. You can try to grow metrics and change things, and they figured it out, right? I mean, there's multiple times where Facebook kind of plateaued in growth and they were able to push through it with data and all the stuff. And what they really taught me there was less about like, here is a growth hacking technique, and it was more of, here is a framework to think about this stuff. Here is how you do testing. Here's how you actually leverage feedback and data to continue to move metrics in the way that you want them to. And obviously, with all the Twitter stuff, et cetera, it's proved to be pretty valuable.
And so you were there until what year?
I was there from 2014, beginning of 2014 to basically the end of 2015.
Okay. And right into, there was a pit stop in between.
So
right?
went Snapchat, had a very short stint at Snapchat, had come in there to.
We don't have to talk about it, but
I'm probably not allowed to talk about it, but yeah, people can Google. And then went and started the venture fund after the Snapchat experience with my partner Jason Williams.
Which
Full Tilt Capital. So Jason's
so this was what? So what year then? This was beginning of 2017.
Like end of 16, like mid 16 we started. And Jason was fascinating. Like going back to the military experience, one of the things I learned early on was you just want to roll with the most badass people, right? Like just if you're good at something, go find everyone else who's good at other things and put them together, and you'll figure stuff out. Yep. Right, and that's true for company building. It was true in the military. It was true, for sports, etc. And Jason could not have been more different in experience in that he had basically had one job his whole life. He started a business when he dropped out of Yale surgical residency program in I think like early 2000s. Over 15 years, built this company, sold for $500 million, 1,400 employees, like it's private equity funded, it's retail, brick and mortars, it's healthcare, highly regulated. Everything was completely different than my experience, but we just had the same mindset to building companies, right? Back the most badass people, and the whole key to building the business is momentum. It's just when you're at a standstill starting, how do you get momentum as fast as possible? So the name Full Tilt is literally, the definition is mass acceleration at top speed. How do you go from standstill to momentum? And I also liked it because everyone thought it was a poker reference.
Yeah.
So there was there was a kind of a contrarian definition to what everyone thought, and
much like Unqualified Opinions.
So perfect.
That's like stolen valor for podcasting. you giving like a great double entendre reference, and then that's being
perfect.
Like, oh, actually,
it's perfect. And so what we did is we just started investing in companies, $50,000, $100,000 checks, and like people basically told us we were crazy, we didn't know what we were doing, all this stuff. We invested in 64, 65 companies.
Any specific focus?
None. Well, the focus was the most badass founders. As early as possible, most badass founders. And so we literally invested in everything from a high performance, high heel company to a company that freezes your brain and tries to upload your memories into a computer, to a produce company, to anti-money laundering software.
And so you get the crypto itch when?
So
this is late 16.
There's two elements to crypto. So one is we invested actually in hindsight in a bunch of, I don't want to say anti-banking, but just like fintech related companies. So we invested in a company that they basically are attacking the banks by providing overdraft coverage. So a lot of people don't realize top 4 banks made $8 billion in the last year.
Huge.
And they all do it through nefarious stuff. Right?
Oh yeah.
Like you got $20 left in your account, you swipe 3 times, 2 of the charges are under $20 and you should be okay. That third time you swipe, they actually route the third charge first, overdraft, and then they get you twice more for the other 2 charges. So you overdraft 3 times and they make more money, $35 at a time. So this company, Bridget, guy left the bank and was like, this is stupid. I'm gonna do it. He's got tens of thousands of users blowing up. Another company we invested in called Bravo Capital, they basically use data to underwrite loans. And then there's this semi-automated process on how they get the money, the principal and the interest back. So a lot of the tokenization stuff early there, but they're not blockchain based, they're not crypto based. And then we also invested in the former chief compliance officer of Facebook Payments left, creating anti-money laundering software. So invested in that. And so out of this portfolio of 65 companies, again, everyone's telling us we're crazy. It's exploded. We got a company that in 3 years they're doing over $100 million in annualized revenue. We're in the first round. We got 2 other companies I think that now have broken over $100 million valuation. All the signs look great. We returned a bunch of capital to investors, all the stuff. And while we're doing this, we're talking to founders before they start the companies. So they're all talking to us about interesting areas. Blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin just keeps coming up, right? 16 and towards the end of 16, finally, all right, I gotta figure this out. Now, the story that everyone always has is like, when did I first hear about Bitcoin? 2014, working at Facebook, when we hired David Marcus, he came from PayPal, and there had been talk about Bitcoin and remittance payments and all this stuff. I turned to this engineer, I was like, hey, what is this thing? Like, that's stupid. Didn't Google it, didn't do it, the classic mistake. And then when I saw it in 16,
I feel like a lot of people have that, right? It's like
you have to have that story.
It's marketing 101, right? Like you need a certain number of impressions before you make a decision.
So true.
So I feel like everybody's got that. Well, I first heard about it, and I was just like, eh.
I want to hear people's stories when they tell me. I always ask them, what was the first time? Because
it's not when did you fall down the rabbit holes. What was your first impression? How many years did it take for you to be like, fuck?
Mine was like 2.5. So I don't know if that's good or bad. But the thing that caught my eye when I did the deep dive again was I essentially walked away with 3 things. ICOs are the dumbest investment opportunity in the world from an investor seat. If I was a founder, I would go ICO my company tomorrow. Because it's non-dilutive capital, there's no governance, there's no recourse. You're basically inventing money.
Beautiful.
I mean, from a founder, it's the best opportunity. From the investor, the risk reward is off the charts in terms of the risk actually being much higher than people realize. You don't own anything, there's no recourse, you can't underwrite it, etc. So Jason and I said, look, we're not going to invest in the ICOs, which people were not happy when we said that. But the second thing was, the core thesis was every single asset, every stock, bond, currency, commodity will be digital. Blockchain is likely to be the path, but they're all going to be digital. And US dollars digital today, right? You already get a digital stock certificate on Carta or AngelList. Like this is going to be pervasive across all assets. Blockchain looks like a good way to do that. And then the third was the infrastructure. Like we didn't think we were in the early 90s. We thought we were like in the late 70s, early 80s in terms of if you built a data center then with servers, you made money for the next 30 years and you didn't care what internet companies were successful or not. You just wanted data going through the pipes. My family's been in the data center business for 40 years. And so I had that context. And then two, mining and the data centers are the identical business with two very critical differences. You get space, you plug power in, you put computers, and you rent the computing power out. In one of those scenarios, a traditional CPU, you have to rent it out to customers. You got to deal with all kinds of customer acquisition, support, they don't pay on time, all this stuff. In mining, you rent the computing power to an algorithm. It's like clockwork, right? Bitcoin's never down. It's always paying you, right?
We know.
And so, see, that's marketing right there. And so what you're doing is you're driving revenue from a source that is much more dependable than the customer, and you also don't have to go acquire the customer. So that was attractive. The second thing was in the data center business, you're getting 7 to 12% annualized returns. Here, we're getting paid 12 to 15% a month. So
you were mining first.
My very first investment in crypto was I bought about $50,000 worth of mining hardware and like used one of these services where you basically like buy it, they host it for you, the whole 9 yards. And I was blown away because I'm looking at the financials from the data center business and I'm looking at what we're doing on the mining. And it's like, holy shit, like we have to.
This is not Bitcoin then. This is other.
So we started with Ethereum first, and then we eventually got into Bitcoin. And
this is 17 then.
So this is like end of 16, and then very early
right before the
17.
big run.
Yeah. So like that caught our attention because we were doing Ethereum, right? And so I told Jason about this mining. I actually did it without telling him at first because I was scared he was gonna think I was crazy. And so I told him, I was like, hey man, this is actually going pretty well. And Jason had personally invested, and then I personally invested in a company called PRTI. Jason actually stepped in to be the CEO. It's a power company. Car tires get taken in on the front end as a waste management business. So the tire manufacturers drop off these tires. We then take the tires and we put them into reactors and we burn them in this what they call thermal demanufacturing. The tire gets broken into oil, steel, carbon, syngas. We sell the oil and the steel as a commodity, and then the carbon and the syngas just gets turned into power. That power, the pro forma was to sell it into the grid, but the business is profitable without monetizing the power. So we're sitting there, and Jason goes, "Oh my God, why don't we just mine crypto with that power? It's more profitable rather than sell it into the grid." And so Jason, gets all the credit in the world for basically making this bold bet. Let's just build the mine right there on the power plant. Built that, couldn't have been better, couldn't have been more advantageous for us. And what it forced us to do was now go for scale. And so as we got into scale, what we realized was you understand from the very basic level of the hardware, how blockchain works, why is mining important, what kind of wallet do we need, right? We're mining, you're going to get the tokens deposited. What's the best wallet? What's the best exchange to go and get fiat from? And you kind of work your way through the industry. And very quickly, him and I just said, look, there's incredible opportunity here. There's real entrepreneurs building this stuff. We think this is going to be a massive industry. And we're looking around the room, and it wasn't cool yet for investors to brag about, like the tier one investors. They were investing, but no one really knew they were investing yet. And so we said, we think that we can go, and if we focus just on this, there's an opportunity that you can become one of the best and ultimately become the best at doing this. And so our second fund, we said we're not going to do anything else other than this. We just ran kind of all in.
And so what is the overlap or interplay between Full Tilt and Morgan Creek?
So Jason and I...
You're still GP in both?
So we had Full Tilt. We were going to raise a second fund, wrote this letter to our LP saying we're going to go do all of this. And we got a little confident, right? We just deployed this first fund. We did some SPVs into Reddit, SpaceX, Lyft, all these things. And we said, let's go raise money from institutions. Let's go to the endowments. They got big dollars. And we said, before we go do that, we're like working out of a Starbucks. So, we don't know what we don't know. We're just two dudes who, frankly, are just happy to be here. We want to hang out with founders. And so I met Mark when we invested in Lyft. And I went to him, and the first conversation, he was trying to learn more about the mining. He thought that was super fascinating with infrastructure. He had previously been an LP in Pantera. Then when they converted to crypto, he was one of the first LPs in their venture fund, all this stuff. I was trying to learn from him about the institutional world. How do you raise money from all these big things? And we just realized over about 50 meetings between me, him, and Jason, if we do this together, like it's a 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 scenario. So we merged the firms together, but we also knew that this was going to be very different, right? There's some compartmentalizing of the risk. There's also the idea of like, let's go build a digital business, all this. And so when we put the two firms together, we created something called Morgan Creek Digital. Morgan Creek Digital is a separate legal entity under the Morgan Creek brand, but it gave Jason and I access to all of their infrastructure. So sales and marketing, RA license, BD license, compliance, accounting, all that stuff. Everything we needed to do to be legit, and then it gave them direct, investing experience in this asset class with everything that we come with, good or bad. And frankly, I think Jason and I would say it couldn't have gone better. And I think
so far so good.
Mark as well, right? It's just that move allowed us to accelerate. Now we just got to go find good companies to invest in.
It's that easy, right? It becomes a heck of a lot more easy when you're actually getting inbound, right? And so what I think you learned very early, and I think many people in the industry that have scaled very quickly have learned early, if you put out good content, stuff comes back to you 10 times over.
You're going to love this.
So
here's my trick. I don't believe in having secrets that no one can copy. So I just tell people exactly the thing that I know.
You just got to outperform.
Well, the thing that I know that nobody else knows is I'm not building an investment firm. I'm building a media company that we monetize through asset management. And,
Amen.
And the way that you build that is very different than if you build an asset management firm where marketing is an afterthought.
Yes.
And I can tell everyone that there is next to 0% chance that 99% of those people are going to be able to come compete with us. We just think we can out execute them.
Yep.
And so that is a very different approach. And I always tell our LPs the same thing. I say, look,
I wouldn't put you guys in the same category, but that is how the presidency was won the last time around.
Oh,
right?
No.
So
people who look at what AOC is doing, Donald Trump, all these people, they are marketers. They are showing you the formula as to what works on the internet. And we can argue over is the impact of that good or bad, a whole other discussion. But what they are showing you is exactly what works. And so you can choose not to participate for whatever, if you don't believe it, you don't think you're good at it, whatever. But the blueprint's out there. And I look at it as asset management firms, especially venture, they all argue over like, oh, our VCs are better, our network's better. We had bigger eggs. It's like this, like, this pissing contest of who's better at.
Well, it's a pissing contest, but it's also show me the numbers.
Well, it's just table stakes.
Right.
Like you have to have a good network. You have to be able to help the founders. You have to not be an asshole, right? All that stuff is table stakes to being an investor.
Well, the last one maybe doesn't, but it helps.
Yeah. And so the way we look at it is we don't want to ever tell an LP we're better than everyone else at X. We want to tell LPs we do something that no one else can repeat.
Yes.
And so if you think about the distribution engine we've built, the moat gets bigger every day. There's more followers, there's more engagement, right? And so why do people, to your comment about inbound, founders and companies come to us on a daily basis and they say, I want you to invest in my company. I don't care how much, because when I call you and tell you turn the machine on, I want you to just blow it out of the water and get me distribution. And what we found is like, if you come to me and you tell me that you're launching a product, I will shut your website down. Right? We will bring so much traffic. It's happened multiple times now. I can shut your website down with how much traffic we can drive. And on top of that, I can drive more traffic than Bloomberg, CNBC, all these websites. That is powerful. But there's also like a responsibility to being able to do that.
Well, because if you do it for the wrong counterparties, everything that you work to build gets thrown right out the window. So it's actually higher stakes than VC, managing a brand.
Oh yeah,
because VC you're spraying bets and it's a portfolio allocation.
How many investors
but if
want to brag about their portfolio?
Exactly. Right. So that is a higher hurdle. I mean, there might be very good businesses that you could back, but if it's something that for whatever reason there's going to be potential blowback, it makes you think about the calculus a little different versus, can I make a ton of money? To your point about the ICO boom, can I make a ton of money if I join as an advisor? Right? This was the situation that I was in 2017, having transitioned out of CoinDesk. Could I make a lot of money by getting these like $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 offers for fucking vaporware? Yeah.
You could have had a full-time job doing it.
And in hindsight, maybe I should have, because then I'd retire and my brand wouldn't matter. But there was a certain element of sleaziness that went, especially with the ICO boom. But I think it's true for anyone that is trying to build up a personal or company brand based around authenticity and some type of unique insights. That gets thrown around a lot, like thought leadership. But it's obvious like who's actually walking the walk and adding value on a day-to-day basis, helping you cut through the noise. I think you do this with your newsletter and the podcast. And it's resonated with people because the tweets aside, which we're going to talk about the dichotomy between that, it resonates with people because you save them time, you save them energy, and you actually like cut through the bullshit. So let's talk about the marketing versus me. Right?
Yeah.
Because you've said flat out, marketing or Twitter's not about nuance.
No, not at all.
It is
if you're trying to have an intellectual conversation on Twitter,
yes.
you're on the wrong platform.
Yes.
And here's how I talk about it. Marketing is about entertainment.
Yep.
That's all it is. Can you hold people's attention? And I say it all the time that audience is a new currency, right? That if you have audience, you're able to do things that other people can't do. You can get access to things other people can't get access to, etc. We see this with like Instagram and YouTube influencers, all this stuff. I don't give a shit about being an influencer. What I do care about is that the right people are paying attention. And the way that I describe it to our LPs is every single day, hundreds of thousands of people listen to a podcast, read a newsletter, and watch these tweets. And they're getting content every day. And some days, in a very transparent way, I take the news and I swap it out for a promotional thing for one of our companies. So BlockFi's a great example. The day they launch this product, right, I talk to the team and they say, okay, on Tuesday, we're going to launch this thing, whatever. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write in the newsletter. I'm going to push it on the podcast. I'm going to tweet about it, all this stuff. And when we did that, the amount of traffic we can drive is incredible. Now, to your point about you got to make sure you're doing it for the right companies. We got more skin in the game than most. We're literally investors in the company. Two is we're super transparent about we're doing this for a company. We invest. Literally, first sentence I think I wrote in the newsletter was we invested in this company.
Yep.
And then the third thing is you've got to be prepared for the blowback. And so one of the things that I made a decision very early on was I'm okay being wrong in public. Right? I don't care about being wrong as long as I'm right more times than I'm wrong. And then two is when people have that blowback, you got to have really tough skin. Right? And the BlockFi announcement was the perfect example. We did what we thought we could do, right? And we drove all this traffic. Incredible blowback. People calling us, we're shilling stuff, we're scam artists, all this stuff. And you just got to sit there and say, do I believe in what they're doing?
Yeah.
And if you believe in what they're doing, you kind of just box out all the noise and you just keep going.
Now, you say that, but you and I and a number of other people, I think, have pretty thick skin. That are on crypto Twitter especially. But you took a break.
Oh yeah, I
took
a break. Yeah.
I've taken a break. So
why'd you take a break?
Same reasons, right? Mine were partially I was sick of dealing with the bullshit during the euphoria, and second of all, because I was getting so sick of it, I was getting increasingly sucked in and irritable and pissed off, and it was reflecting in like the tone of the tweets. And I was like, I don't have time for that. It's bad for everybody, right? No one wants to see. Like I've said my piece, this market cycle is going to play itself out, and so I should just take a step back.
That's exactly why I was.
But yours was different because you were getting harassed.
So I was getting harassed.
This is mid 2018. So people were especially biting at that point. Because the market was coming down.
Yeah. So it was really, really bad and toxic. Two was I'm going to say what I believe, right? And the problem with doing that, there's a lot of benefits, right? People are attracted to the authenticity, etc. The problem is that when people disagree, they will say back really aggressive things because they're like, oh, this dude can handle it, right? And the tipping point for me was I started thinking about taking a break when I realized that I was probably saying and becoming a person online. I was like, this isn't me. Like, I actually enjoy being nice to everyone, whether you're nice to me or not, right? And kind of take the nice guy route most of the time. But I like it was like on a daily basis. I was like getting in these spats with people, and I just felt like I was getting sucked in, right?
Yes.
And then the final straw to me was I think I know who it was. Doesn't matter who it is. But somebody created a anonymous account and they created two of them, one on Twitter and one on Medium, and they were just saying just nasty shit. And
is it a parody account?
No, this was like completely not like didn't even have a
just
photo,
to attack. Yeah.
And at one point there was a statement that could have been taken as a death threat. I didn't take it that way, but it was borderline. And I was just like, this is stupid. And so I just like, look, I'm taking a break. I didn't know how long. I knew I was going to come back. Like the marketing machine is too valuable.
Yeah.
It was just like, let's all just kind of calm down. And when I came back, it was fine.
Well, what's wild about that is you're one of the most positive people on Twitter.
Crazy,
right? I understand when I get death threats.
When you go after people,
like when I go after people, I know there's going to be blowback, right? So,
but I was in their defense, and again, I don't want to defend them, but I was going after people in the sense of I felt like it was unfair. People who I actually agree with, the way in which they were attacking people, I felt was not the appropriate way. And I think that, again, it was mostly bear market, just blues of people like, dude, this thing is just falling off a cliff. Where's the bottom, right? Yep. And look, I wasn't around in 2014, right? So I don't know how kind of the last bear market played out. But from what everyone tells me, like, it's pretty similar, right? And
it was similar. It was a lot less, right? So and you knew a lot of the people, right? So you'd bicker or whatever, and you'd be like, fuck you, no fuck you, and then you'd see each other for drinks. You'd be like, all right, this market sucks. Right now, it's orders of magnitude. There's a lot of retail investors that lost a lot of money from some of the shadier ICOs, and so I'd agree. I think in the last year was particularly much more toxic, and it was the first time that Bitcoin was seriously challenged in terms of monetary supremacy. I'd say because Ether, there are a lot of people that believe. And I don't know how this is going to play out, but you can certainly make the case that Ether, as a reserve currency for other tokens and other tokenized assets, has a lot of monetary properties, which Bitcoin has been very, very rigorously focused on peer-to-peer payment settlement, like the gold use case.
This is a great point that is also tangentially related to your idea of like Twitter's not for nuance, right? So somebody asked me the other day, they said, why do you always talk about Bitcoin? In most cases, for people outside of like the really hardcore crypto enthusiasts, Bitcoin is a proxy for all of crypto.
For crypto,
right? And so the audience...
Crypto's confusing. Bitcoin has like a narrative.
I'm not shy in telling people, I'm not here to talk to the hardcore crypto enthusiast or the developer. I'm here to talk to the mass audience, and I'm here to talk to institutional investors who sometimes the first question they ask is, isn't all of this illegal? Right? I mean, like that's the start of what is a blockchain, right? Like that's where we're starting sometimes. And so if that's my perspective, that's my target audience, I'm going to talk differently than everyone else. Now, on top of that, Bitcoin, because it serves as a proxy, when I'm talking about Bitcoin, I actually do mean Bitcoin, but a lot of times I also mean crypto in general. Right? I'm using their terminology. And so I think that there's no nuance on Twitter. And then two is this idea that like Bitcoin's gonna fail and everyone else is gonna succeed. It will be horrible for crypto if Bitcoin fails, right? Like, it may actually be fatal in some people's minds. That the number one asset that all of these people who want to be excited, they're cautiously optimistic about the industry. If the only asset they know fails, you think Quadriga is bad? It would be disastrous.
It's borderline game over. I agree with that.
Yeah, and so to me, like,
or it's this game over, right? Maybe the reset button gets hit, and then it's like post.com bust cycle where it's a very, very slow ramp, and it's a much different community, but it's hard to imagine that getting bootstrapped again.
I put the number at more than 50% of the institutional investors I talk to could tell you the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like the second largest cryptocurrency available, some of them don't even know what Ethereum is, and some of them...
It doesn't matter because they're not developers. They just want to know, is this a place where we should be putting 5 basis points?
Exactly. That's
it. It's very, the conversations are very, very different.
That, and then look, and on the other side too, you would be surprised how many institutional investors are bought into the idea that the US dollar is in trouble, right? Like there's actually a lot of very smart, financially driven or financially educated people believe that. I mean, Ray Dalio was out on saying it might fail next year.
Yeah, no, it's only accelerating because with each administration, each election in the U.S., everybody just kind of throws up their hands and like, well, we've kept spending money and the market keeps going up, and so we're not going to not legislate our pet programs or actually solve any of this. And now, like, the big meme is MMT, modern monetary theory, which no one knows what they're actually talking about, but now it's like a big thing on crypto Twitter. But the gist is basically we can continue to print money because the U.S. dollar is our leading export, and financial services is 25% of the economy. So whatever, we'll just keep doing it until the music stops, and then.
Well, I was gonna say,
I know what the fuck happens.
I've talked about this, and I think that you're generally in this age range where 25 to 35-year-olds are more excited about crypto than the like 18 to 22-year-olds, in my experience, right?
I am in that age range. I look older, but I am in that age range.
All right, so I'm dead square in that age range, so we're good. But in that, I think that one of the key pieces to why that specific demographic is so excited about crypto and sees the potential is we grew up in a world where our parents never thought that large financial institutions or the government could fail or bad in the sense of they were doing like things that added too much risk, etc. They were seen as steady, kind of sturdy organizations that was what you did. You became friends with a banker, they gave you a loan for your home, you had a nice life, etc. We all came of age where we were cognizant of the financial crisis, right? The global financial crisis, but we weren't like in a position where we had enough assets at risk, where we were financially hurt and got scared. So we saw these institutions basically come to their knees and literally have the government bail them out. And we saw it, we understood it, we were like, that's not good. And then we started to actually make a living, right? Then we graduated or we just graduated. And so I think that we saw it and now are in a position to do something about it, and that memory is still here.
I think there's some truth to that. I think the only thing that I would say it's a little bit different. I actually think that that it was 10 times worse because we didn't have risk assets.
Yes.
Instead, it was like a lifestyle readjustment because the market goes down 50%. As long as people didn't panic sell that actually had a nest egg, right, it's back up way over where it was previously. It was 75% from like the previous all-time high, something like that. But that doesn't really apply when you're just starting out and now like all the career, like there's 50% underemployment for like college grads. Like,
crazy.
You try to afford rent in the city, like good luck if you're not working a very, very good financial services or other coveted job right out of school. And people got student loans and like no path to owning a home because property values are so high. It's actually much more pernicious because it's been gradual and just like a total reset of, I think, people's lifestyle.
For sure.
And then you see the government and like it's the same shit, different like ends of the spectrum every single like 4-year, 2-year cycle either. So long term, super bullish for Bitcoin proper, crypto. But like terrifying, right? It's almost, and this is how I got into the industry, which is just at some point this is going to stop. So this seems like a pretty interesting replacement for gold for digital natives. And it was as simple as that. And then every single year that passes, I don't care that it came down 75, 80%. It's like that thesis 5 years ago was the right one. Now it's really the right one. And I think the thing that you're in touch with that people don't understand is this institutions are coming meme is not limited in truth. It's limited by the fact that the industry's infrastructure still isn't there. Like qualified custodians, the ETF, and quality data so that these guys can prove that they've executed trades and made investments in a responsible manner.
And I also think that
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and there's a narrative violation. I don't know where I heard that terminology, but I really like
violation.
Yeah, narrative violation in that the crypto community wants to believe that this entire movement is about decentralization, like burn down Wall Street, change the world, all this stuff. One, I don't necessarily agree with that. Two, I think that institutions...
Certainly not anymore.
Yeah, and institutions are scared shitless of that narrative.
Yep.
And then three is... I'm going to tell anyone who's trying to raise institutional capital, here is the pitch that works. We are moving to a digital world. We were in an analog world. We went to an electronic world where we had ones and zeros moved around on the screen, but you still had to settle the physical assets. We're now going to a world that's digital. And in a digital world, you need three things. You need digitally native assets that are created in the digital world, transacted, held. They always stay in the digital world. They're not tied to physical assets. 2, you need digitally native accounting. Triple entry accounting that prevents the double spend of computer files. And then 3 is you need digitally native contracts. The ability for automation to take place between parties or transactions, machine-to-machine transactions. Digitally native assets, digitally native accounting, digitally native contracts. I didn't use crypto, blockchain, any of that kind of super sexy terminology describing that. Institutions believe in automation. They believe in a digital world. They don't give a shit about your shitcoin, your ICO, any of this stuff. And so what they want to understand is, I believe in a digital world that's going to be automated, etc. How can you help me gain exposure to that trend? And newsflash, it's usually not through the ICOs. It's usually not through this stuff. It is going to be through owning equity in businesses, holding some of the largest assets that are non-correlated, asymmetric return, like the things that crypto enthusiasts, and probably even you and I, are most excited about in crypto, are 2 or 3 years away from the institutions even allowing people to have that conversation behind closed doors. They're not going to invest in that stuff today, right? So we have to understand where they are in their process of learning about the asset, deploying capital, etc. And we need to go talk to them and say, you want to invest in equity? Great, there's plenty of equity opportunities. In fact, if you had invested in Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, Bitmain, etc., their seed and Series A's, you would have outperformed the appreciation of Bitcoin in the same time frame. So the equity actually was a better financial investment than Bitcoin. That doesn't mean you shouldn't invest in Bitcoin, but having those nuanced conversations with them are really important. And I think that we're now getting enough asset managers in crypto to have those conversations, and it's going to pay off over the next 2 years.
What's really interesting about that point is the industry has also hit an inflection point that not many people talk about, which is you can now make investments that you can expect to outperform the underlying.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
That was not the case.
That wasn't true.
You know, you think about mining, and I mean, we made these calculations at DCG, right? When we were investing in the last bear market. Would I rather purchase Bitcoin or invest in a mining company? Where you've got all of this company-specific risk and team-specific risk, and you've got to worry about
no liquidity,
like the margin compression, and you know, will this team be able to keep up on the hardware innovation side? Didn't make a whole lot of sense, right? The exchanges, well, you know that if the exchanges are going to grow in value, then the underlying needs to grow in value, and there needs to be more volatility. So, like, what's the break even for you to invest in an equity exchange versus like the underlying asset? And now there's not another 1,000x to go for Bitcoin, right?
Just depends who you ask, but yes, I agree.
All right, if there is another 1,000x, then the dollar will cease to exist. Right?
The probability is in the next bull market, there's a 30 to 50x on the table. That's possible. That means it's going to happen, right? And so the comparison is, if you're a venture investor investing in the early stage, you're shooting for much more than 30, 50x in your companies.
Yes, exactly. So now there's a path to making equity investments, which I think is very different, and it's much healthier as you think about this infrastructure build out versus previous ones. So I think that's exciting. It's certainly within your thesis. One thing you've always been transparent about, like, here's the playbook. I'm not hiding anything. Like, yes, I capitalized whoa because I know that I just got 20% more impressions. Because that's how the game is played. Maybe we won't focus on the tricks necessarily. But what are some of the things that entrepreneurs, investors, people that are serious, that are full throttle in this industry, maybe they're just starting out, or maybe they're just trying to stand out amidst the sea of noise? What are the narrative rules that have to be followed? Forget about like the tweet structure. The narrative rules. Your post about contracts, accounting, assets, digitally native, done. One line. It works. You didn't use any terminology. How can that be applied consistently across?
So I'm going to answer this in 2 ways. One is there's 2 approaches you can take. You can say, hey, I want to be known for the ideas that I put out there and kind of be public, or I just want to do whatever I'm going to do in private. If you choose to go the public route, I always tell people that it comes down to the quality and the consistency of the content. Too many people are not willing to put in the work to actually create the content, right? And so
it's outsourced.
Look, you do the same way that I do, right? Every freaking day, I wake up and I write this damn thing. There's days where I don't want to write it. And I'm like, I have to write it. I write it. I record podcasts. I do all this stuff. Twitter, I spend hours a day responding to people and doing all this stuff. My girlfriend would get rid of Twitter for me. She would pay any amount of money to get it off my phone, right? And there's times where she'll literally say to me after dinner, I appreciate you not being on your phone at dinner. And I feel like an asshole that she's saying that to me, but she understands that I spent 3 hours today on Twitter, right?
It's LinkedIn, it's Salesforce, it's MailChimp, it's the whole professional development package. If you do it right,
yes,
right, and to your point, you put the time in.
So it's consistency and then the quality. You can't be a complete asshole, right?
Yes.
You can't do it. But if you have the consistency and quality, you're good. The second thing is,
but you can. It depends on your brand, right? You cannot.
Yeah. It's true. That's true.
The bar is much higher for you than it is for me, right?
You can train your audience for expectations.
For me, I always get like 1 or 2 rants a week.
That's fine.
Like, all right, that's just TBI, right? That's part of that comes with the territory. And then people see me in person, like you grab a drink and like settle up, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. But the stakes are much higher. Yeah, you can never make a mistake.
So I think that's one. But
no pressure.
Two is also I think that there are too many people that think intelligence is measured through the intellectual Olympics. Or I think Joe Carlson and Nelson recently they called it the thought leadership Olympics, right?
Yes.
Like just this idea that like I have to use big words, I have to use complex topics. Also, like no, actually the simplest language is going to win here, right? And so I think that it is easy to write the really complex things. Like that doesn't make you smart. When I see that, I actually think you're dumb. And people get mad when I say that, but I think that you're dumb.
I agree.
Because you don't have enough command to explain this in a simple language. You actually couldn't teach this to a little kid.
Yes.
You actually didn't take enough time to take your 37-page Medium post and put it into 6 paragraphs, right?
I always find what's fascinating. I think it's Japan.
Okay.
It might be multiple countries where the newspapers are maybe even required to only use the top 1,000 most common words.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
I know I'm not just pulling that out of thin air.
There's something.
I think it's Japan. It's something, but regardless, maybe I just did totally make that up. I feel like if that were actually the case,
it'd be awesome.
Communications would be so much more fluid. Elon Musk talks about this even with SpaceX. Stop using jargon and acronyms.
What is Twitter?
Speak clearly. Yes.
Twitter is the people who get rewarded on Twitter are the people who can take highly complex ideas and boil it down and explain it in less than 280 characters and usually in the simplest language.
Yes.
Right? And so like to me that is why Twitter is so
280 has made us all intellectually lazier.
it absolutely has. And so I think that's one piece. The other piece is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's not a new theory that needs to be created every week, right? I'm in awe of public market investors or long-term private equity investors, right? If you're on Twitter, these are the Brent B. Shores, the Patrick O'Shaughnessy's, all these guys who really take a different view than the like hyper short-term profit-driven crypto traders, right? And the thing is, they have a strategy and they're going to deploy that strategy over 30 years. Like that time frame in crypto, first of all, feels like 150 years. And then 2 is they know that the consistency of effort and the discipline of the application of their strategy far outweighs having to be smart, right? And I think it's Brent, who I'm just super impressed by the guy, but he one time...
ARK Invest, right?
No, Brent is Adventures. Adventures, and then it's like .es is the website. I think it's him who said, it's like a Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger quote that's just like, look, my job is just to not be dumb, right? Or like to all I have to do is just not be stupid, and I'm going to be okay because the strategy is sound. I think.
And then there's a corollary to that: if you're so smart, why aren't you rich?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Which is especially true.
Crypto is the perfect example of like there are some very, very specific strategies that we know are likely to work. The probability outweighs the risk. People don't want to do them because it's not sexy enough. It's not like it doesn't let them brag how smart they are. And so like Bitcoin is one of the things that just blows my mind. I talk to fund managers all the time and I'm like, so how do you guys think about all these assets, whatever? A lot of times they don't talk about Bitcoin. They immediately jump to all these other things and I wait. And we're an hour and a half in the conversation. I say, well, what do you think about Bitcoin? And it's almost like a throwaway, it's stupid, right? Like we are doing things that are going to generate alpha. and you're looking, you're saying, wait a minute, it's the best performing asset over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, right? It actually outperformed everything else. And so I think that that's the thing, again.
The best performing asset of all time.
Yeah, you
right?
just have to be comfortable knowing I don't need to be the smartest dude, right? I don't need to be the smartest woman. All I need to be is good enough to accomplish the goal that I want. And it's okay if I use somebody else's idea.
Yep.
Like you still benefit from somebody else's idea. That's okay.
Yeah, I am never going to write a better, more cogent tweet storm than Naval's "Markets will replace networks."
Dude's a genius.
Right? That took like 30 years of reflection and life experience, and no one is gonna be able to reinvent that. Like there are certain things, and I single that one out because it's probably one of the more well known. But there are certain theses that you point to it and you're like, yeah, what he or she said.
It's like some people are great at the ideas.
That.
Some people are great at the delivery of the ideas. Some people are great at implementing the ideas. Like all you have to understand, and again, look, all the great investors talk about the same thing, right? What do you do that, again, you're not just better than everybody else. What do you do that is different? That you have a special skill. You have to be self-aware enough to understand that. Once you understand that, just triple down on it. Don't worry about everything else, right? And I think that is a part of crypto that we get sucked into this idea, and it's the whole industry, right? Of like, oh, it's the polymath, industry. Like you have to be good at everything. Like, that's not true, right? It's actually most of the most successful people in the world were good at one thing, and they did it better than anybody else in the world, and because nobody else was doing it, right? And so it's the whole belief that like concentration builds wealth, diversification keeps wealth. That's not only true of just money. That's also true of skills, intelligence, etc. Just the playbook's easy. Just what are you better than everybody else at because no one else can do it? Just go do it.
Well, master communicator. Maybe
I actually don't even think I'm that good at it.
Well,
that's the worst part. I actually don't think I'm that good at it.
Well, by this industry standards, the bar is so low that you just have to kind of like casually step over it. So, just take a fucking compliment every once in a while. Anthony Pompliano, the only person that would get me to do an hour podcast when I said I was going to try to keep all these to 30 minutes. But I
was late. I'm an asshole. I was late.
No, I wasn't even going to go there. No, I was just saying.
I'm apologizing to everybody that I was late.
Yeah, I was just saying the length. Don't worry about it. It happens. The length. I felt like someone had to do like a profile of you, like you do for so many other folks, right? So this one would be an exception, just because Pomp has never been able to interview himself.
Do you want to know why I do the podcast? It's the greatest hack to get interesting people to come talk to you.
Yeah, it's all like
it's the most self-serving thing I do.
We should have a business development meeting.
It's so
but
true.
Then I should also double this up with marketing. I mean, yeah, it's exactly the same thing, right? So we're gonna turn off the camera, talk shop, right now, both of us.
We're gonna share secrets
and share secrets and create the crypto podcasting cabal behind the scenes. So we can just start indoctrinating
like a cartel,
people.
Like a podcast cartel. We'll get Peter McCormick.
Yes.
Laura Shin, right?
Yep.
Everybody.
Yep. So
I don't know.
That's about as transparent as we're going to get with that, and everything else we're going to plot behind the scenes. So, guys and gals, thank you for joining. The one and only Pomp.
Thanks, guys.
On Twitter, Pompliano, and I will continue to bicker back and forth with them and keep him in check at 2BitIdiot. Until next time, until Tuesday, have a good weekend. Peace.